Good.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is an insurance policy. It may never actually be needed, but if it is, then it's obviously the right thing to do to have it implanted. Now, as Vice President, it's all taking place after the onset of coronary artery disease. It's something you live with, and it's my great good fortune that the technology's gotten so good that.
I think for all those decades in government, in Congress, and in business, he'll be remembered primarily for the 2003 Iraq War, which in one way was the pinnacle of American power, and in another way was its downfall. I think there is an irony here. In later years, Dick Cheney would become a vocal critic of Donald Trump for trying to break the American system, a critic in particular of Trump's threat to democracy.
Watch the stage.
Well, the future of the country is at stake.
Cheney did that not as a man of the left, he did it as a hard right conservative. But in a way, for all that criticism of Trump, Dick Cheney was part of an administration. You see the pictures on screen, the George W. Bush administration that opened the way for Trump, because in a way they broke the rules. They broke the rules both before and after 9/11 because they were intent on that regime change in Iraq, that attempt to display American power by breaking the rules, not only in pursuing that invasion, but by pursuing torture, for example, by setting aside the Geneva Conventions, by setting aside the US courts at times. They paved the way for Donald Trump to do that in a much more flagrant way more than 20 years later.
Morning. Hope everybody.
Endorsed Dick Cheney's start, was all the way back in the Nixon administration in the early 70s, during the Cold War. He was always keen on national security as part of American power overseas. And he did that in 1989 to 1993 as defense secretary at a time when there was the first war with Iraq in 1991, after Iraq, of course, had invaded Kuwait. I think the difference between that Cheney as defense secretary then and the Cheney as vice president, allied with defense secretary Donald Rumsfeld, is that during the first Bush administration, that still was very much a Reagan type administration. That the idea is that America had to defend itself by intervening abroad when there was a clear threat to international security. And Iraq posed that threat in the early 1990s. In 2001, that wasn't the case. It wasn't the case that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11. He was a horrible, horrible man, especially to Iraqis, but it was others who were involved in 9/11. And Cheney and Rumsfeld used that as a pretext to go beyond the Reagan tradition in foreign policy. America had to be seen as the superpower, the only superpower. And in a way, they had to do it beyond the international system.
Goes the other governor.
I do know it, and I'm really proud of her. Thanks, Martha. Well, it was a great night. It was an interesting night.
That's why when other countries said, look, don't attack Iraq, let's go through the process of inspecting, of trying to find these weapons of mass destruction. When those countries included France and Germany and almost the UK, Cheney and Rumsfeld pushed George Bush to go ahead anyway. And of course, the cost of that was hundreds of thousands killed in Iraq, several thousand US servicemen killed, but it also opened the way for really a display of American weakness. That was the paradox, that America didn't look like that power that Cheney wanted to project. It looked like a country that was vulnerable. And one of the people who would prey upon that perceived vulnerability would be Donald Trump.
In these hearings so far, you've heard from more than a dozen Republicans who've told you
long his presidency. I can imagine no.
Liz Cheney, very, very conservative like her father. But Liz Cheney saw the threat of Donald Trump that was not just to the rule of law, not just to the rules of the game, but to the American system itself. So Trump posed a threat that was beyond what America had had 20 years earlier, because Dick Cheney always believed at the end of the day in the American system. I think he was misguided in the way he defended it. He believed in the American system. Liz Cheney was a Republican who sacrificed her career, who was absolutely vilified by Trump for standing up and saying, whether Republicans or Democrats, the system must be defended. And I think she should be commended for that.
Good. See you later. Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
Thank you, sir. I have a gay daughter, so it's an issue that our family is very familiar with. We have two daughters, and we have enormous pride in both of them.
Right, guys. What are you primary? Come on, guys. Watch the stage.
Well, the future of the country is at stake.
Right.
And there are moments when we all have to come together.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to Mirror Now.